Hello, my name is Holly Gentry, and today is the 28th of January. And the book I will be talking about today is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. And I do not have a physical copy because I borrowed it on Libby through my library. So this is my copy. And the pages I've read since last week are pages 47 to 57. And the chapter I'm going to focus on today is chapter 4. So what's happening in this chapter is the confrontation between Johnny and Ponyboy and Bob and four other Socs, which ends in Bob's death. So this chapter begins with Ponyboy and Johnny hanging out at the fountain in the park after Ponyboy had a fight with Derry and ran to Johnny for comfort. And the boys are like sitting around the fountain and they're talking about running away together and they're just kind of hanging out when they see what is Bob's blue Chevy, I believe, pull up with four other Socs in it. And so the Socs get out of the car and they're clearly drunk. And Johnny and Ponyboy talk about running away, but they run out of time. And so they are caught in a confrontation between them and Bob and his friend, and then the other three, whose names I can't remember right now. So Bob is clearly angry about Ponyboy and Johnny stealing their girls earlier in the night because they spotted Cherry and Marcia walking with Johnny and Ponyboy when they were walking home from the movies. And they like pulled up and they got all mad, and the girls had to get in the car with them and drive away. And so this is them coming back. And so what ensues is a violent fight where Bob winds up holding Ponyboy's head under the fountain, and then Johnny stabs Bob with his switchblade to free him. And when Ponyboy comes to and realizes what happened, the boys decide the only help they can get is from Dally, who's at the Cowboys party. And so Dally is helpful, and he gives them $50 that he got from Meryl because that's as much as he could get from Meryl. And then he tells them to catch a train and to hide out at an old church, which is what they do. So they catch the train, they lie to a farmer for directions, and finally get there. And the chapter wraps up with John or Ponyboy thinking about the church being kind of like a premonition because it was kind of scary, and he felt like that was. Yeah, it's premonition. So the claim that I want to talk about today is like obviously classism is a huge influence in this entire novel. It's like one of the main points the book's built upon, and that's definitely seen in this chapter through like the interactions between the Socs and the Gracers, and then like the Gracers whenever they're walking through the small farm town feel like they look like greasers, obviously, so they don't fit in a farm town. But that's actually not what I want to talk about today. What I want to talk about is the themes of loss of innocence in this chapter. So, up until this point, both Ponyboy and Johnny have played passive roles in the novel in their friend group because Ponyboy is like the observer narrator and Johnny is the silent one. But this chapter puts an end to this passivity as Johnny murders the Soc Bob to save Ponyboy from being murdered. This event changes both Johnny and Ponyboy's lives inexplicably, and the way that they handle this change also differs completely between them. Johnny, in a way, grows up in that moment, and while the audience sees he has like a moment of panic on page 49, paragraph 3, right after Ponyboy wakes up, it reads, "He was sitting next to me, one elbow on his knee, and staring straight ahead. He was a strange greenish white, and his eyes were huger than I'd ever seen them." However, only a few paragraphs later, when Ponyboy starts to panic, Johnny resolves himself in quiet strength. One much too old for his age, on page 49, paragraph 7. "Go ahead," he said, in the same steady voice. "I won't look at you." And then this same calm steadiness continues throughout the chapter as Ponyboy continues to spiral. Just basically, Johnny kind of has to stay the rock between the two of them. Ponyboy in this moment, like it shows his age and the way that he panics and spirals and takes this situation very hard. And then Johnny kind of stands as like the firm strength, which is even kind of shown in the scene wherever they're on the train. Like Johnny sits up, and I didn't write this down. I probably should find it in the book, but Johnny is like sitting in the train car, and then Ponyboy puts his head in his lap, and Johnny lets him sleep the entire time, which is a very like, it's a grown-up thing to do. And he complains when they get off that his legs fell asleep, and Ponyboy's like, "Well, why didn't you wake me up?" And he was like, "Well, you just needed to sleep." So he really grew up in this moment, and Ponyboy experienced like that loss of innocence. And then it also changes the way that Ponyboy sees Johnny, which is evidenced on page 50 before paragraph 7. I looked at Johnny. He didn't look like any farm boy to me. He still reminded me of a lost puppy who had been kicked too often, but for the first time, I saw him as a stranger might see him. He looked hard and tough because of his black t-shirt and his blue jeans and jacket, and because his hair was heavily greased and so long. And so this loss of innocence even affects the way Ponyboy sees Johnny, as for the first time he sees him the way the world sees him instead of the way that he's always seen his friend. So he kind of realizes like what they look like to an outsider. And then, yeah, so obviously this is like the cataclysmic chapter of this book. And so my personal response was that it's always really sad. I hate this chapter because like, you go through the first couple of chapters and it's obviously like, it's never really like a fun book, for me whenever I read this, but it's always kind of sad to read those first chapters just to know what's going to happen. And then this chapter always makes me really sad because like it's just gets so much worse from here. Um, but yeah, so that's it.